All right, everybody. It is 6 o'clock on Thursday, January 22nd, and we are going to have our special meeting here today. So please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. And before we get started here, I'm also going to invite any members of the public that would like to sit at the table. You are more than welcome to join these two sides. With that, can I get a roll call?
It's not like church.
Councilmember Carter? Here. Councilmember Clarici?
Here.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Here.
Vice Mayor No.
Here.
Mayor Gottberg?
Here.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to item number 3, adoption of the agenda.
I'll move the agenda.
All set.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. All right, so now we are moving on to our discussion and action item tonight, the water and wastewater rate workshop.
Thank you, Mayor Gottberg, members of the council, and folks here tonight to hear our study. And so we have a full agenda for you. First of all, I'd like to introduce our sewer and water cost of service study team. First, we have Nick Stone, Director of Public Works, Melissa Savage, City Engineer, Natalie Tornancasa, Interim Director of Finance, Michael Fritchie, Water Reclamation Facility Chief Plant Operator, and Michael DeGroot, Vice President, Bartle Wells Associates, our consultant. So with that, we'll dive in. Tonight, we're going to, first of all,
And who are you?
oh, my name is Dave Warren. I'm the city manager, sorry. Thank you. So we're going to talk about our mission statement, primary goal of the rate study, sewer and water rate services, operating costs versus projects, unfunded program needs, cost of providing services, proposed rates, rate options, and next steps. And of course, any questions you have or comments. So first of all, the mission of this study was to provide, or mission of the city is to provide clean, safe, reliable water and wastewater collection and treatment services at a reasonable cost to Placerville customers 24/7, 7 days a week. So that's our goal. And then the goal of the study is to establish rates that cover the cost of operating and proactively maintaining the sewer and water systems over the next 5 years. So the sewer and water services, we at the city have, these are the 6 primary areas that we work in. One is water acquisition and delivery, so the water pipes that deliver the water. We purchase water from EID, El Dorado Irrigation District, at a wholesale rate, and we deliver that to the customer. There's meters, there's pumps that we have to maintain. We have, I believe, almost 50 miles of water lines, 45 miles of water lines. We treat your sewer, so we collect the sewer and then we treat it. And we have sewer pipes. We have approximately 50 miles of sewer lines. And we treat almost 1 million gallons of sewer daily on a dry weather flow. When it rains, it's even more than that. But and then engineering, we need engineers to monitor the system and also design projects whenever we have to replace a sewer line or do improvements to our wastewater treatment plant. Those things have to be engineered. And then accounting, your utility bill, Natalie, her team, they actually generate the utility bills to you, answer questions, and all the customer service. So, and then just general administration, my department, city council, those costs. So our public works team. So this team, this is most of the department, believe it or not, and we have a total of 15 and a half employees that service the public works department. And they're responsible, again, for 53 miles of road, 45 miles of water line, 50 miles of sewer line, and several miles of storm drain. So there's 15 people doing all of that, including the water and sewer pieces. And then we have our water reclamation facility staff. We currently have 10. One of those positions is vacant. But this team, again, has to They're responsible for treating over, well, approximately 1 million gallons of sewer daily, even more when it rains. So, and we have a very stringent NPDES permit that we have to fall under and run the plant under. It's very restrictive. So,
What's NPD?
National Pollution Discharge, thank you very much.
Discharge Elimination System. Okay.
All right, so looking at the water sewer rates, just as an update, our last study was completed in February 2018, so that was pre-pandemic, and everyone remembers the inflation that we experienced during the pandemic that never really came down. So we're still recovering from that. It was a 5-year study, and the last increase was implemented in June of 2022. Since 2022, the Consumer Price Index, which is an index to monitor cost, has been about 8.31%, which I believe is on the low end, but that's what they measured it at. And of course, costs have increased since 2022. We do have unfunded mandates that we have to deal with. Those have increased. And then the good news is our water reclamation facility, we have a photovoltaic solar project that we're almost done with. There is one piece regarding a transformer we're still working on, but we're hoping by later this year, that'll be up and running. That'll save us about $150,000 in wastewater costs per year. So now I'm going to turn it over to Interim Director of Finance, Natalie Tornicosta, to talk about operating costs versus project costs.
Thank you, Dave. Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's workshop. So as Dave mentioned, I'm just going to walk you through the next couple of slides. So this slide, when we look at operating costs versus projects, the city's water and sewer rates is what funds the operating costs. Okay, so what are operating costs for water and sewer? Well, they're primarily made up of personnel. So you just saw those pictures, and Dave mentioned the water reclamation facility and the public works department. But he also mentioned engineering and accounting. So when we look at personnel costs, we're talking salary and benefits. Salary is based on a 5-step pay schedule, step 1 to step 5, and the city offers a 3-tier health insurance, so single, 2-party, and family. As Dave mentioned, we have a couple vacant positions. When we have a vacant position, we forecast that position at a step 3, which is a middle of the pay scale with family medical benefits. When we forecast employee benefits over a 5-year period, we're looking at a 5 to 10% increase. That's what it's been historically. I will tell you this year it was a 13% increase. So in addition to personnel is what makes up majority of our operating costs, we also have services and supplies. So when we look at services and supplies over a 5-year projection, we forecasted an annual CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, with an expenditure increase of 3.52% a year. So what kind of services are provided under those operating costs? Well, contract services for lab analysis, chemicals, utility services, maintenance and repair, like building, electrical, mechanical maintenance, vehicle repair, instrument testing and repair. And then when we look at supplies, you've got office and department supplies, computer supplies, safety gear, concrete, road oils, pipes and couplings, fuel and vehicle parts. So personnel, services, supplies. In addition, we have debt payments, equipment like computers and vehicles, insurance, workers' compensation, general liability, property insurance, as well as other expenses. So water and sewer rates is what funds our operations. The next slide will discuss what funds our projects.
Could I get an elaboration on the debt payment and how much that, I know there's a slide, but I think we need to hit that here as well. That debt payment is a significant cost to us because of the loans we have on the facility.
Thank you, Councilmember Clarici. This was back in 2009, we had to finance $45 million worth of improvements to our wastewater treatment plant. We talked about the NPDES permit. That permit, when it was renewed in the early 2000s, the requirements for pollution discharge were significant. And for example, the effluent, the water that comes out of the plant into Hangtown Creek has to be basically drinking water quality. You can literally drink the effluent. It's that clean. So in order to do that, we had to build the improvements for $45 million. The debt service on that, principal and interest, the principal on that right now is about $35 million total. There's a few leases in there too, but it's primarily that debt. So the debt to the sewer enterprise fund is about 41% of our operating budget of our sewer enterprise fund, just so you know. So the rates, every dollar of rate money, 41 cents just goes to the debt. So before flushing toilets or doing anything, it just pays the debt. One other piece I wanted to mention is EID. We buy our water from EID. We do buy it at wholesale rates. They passed along a 12% increase each year for the next 5 years starting last year. So we're dealing with that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. So when we look at what funds our projects, the good news is we do have two add-on sales tax measures. They're called Measure H and Measure L, and that's what funds our projects. So Measure H, as you can kind of see on the slide, that it primarily funds sewer projects like sewer lines, the water reclamation facility, and our sewer debt payments. For the fiscal year of 25-26, the sales tax was budgeted to fund the following capital improvement projects, just to kind of give you an idea of where those sales tax go. So we had the Giovanni Road sewer line replacement, multiple water reclamation facility projects, and then this, like I said, the city's sewer annual debt payment, as well as increasing the Measure H construction reserve for upcoming projects. What you'll also notice on this slide is that we have water line projects and water debt payments crossed out, and that's because a while back, City Council decided to remove the water line and water debt payments from Measure H to ensure that the city meets our required 120% sewer debt coverage for our 2006 SRF loan and our 2022 water revenue bonds. So when you look at Measure H, it's a quarter add-on sales tax, and that primarily funds our sewer projects. We also have a second sales tax called Measure L, and that's double the amount. So that's a 0.5% add-on sales tax, and that sales tax actually covers both water and sewer projects. And some of the projects that it's funding this year is our annual storm drain compliance, Smith Flat Road paving and storm drain, Mallard Lane maintenance, Placerville Drive pedestrian connectivity, Canal Street Phase 1 and 1A. And the great thing about Measure L is we've really done a great job of getting grant funding from the federal and the state. And what Measure L helps with is the local match, because most grant funds are at 100%, that they do require the city to match those funds, a portion of those funds. So I just kind of wanted to walk you through the difference between what funds our operating costs, which is our water and sewer rates, and what funds our projects, which is our add-on sales tax. The last slide I'll be going over is our 2025-2026 funding. So the add-on sales tax for Measure H revenue is forecasted to come in at $1.399 million to fund those projects that I just mentioned, and the annual Measure L revenue for this fiscal year is $2.79 million to fund the projects. And then regarding the sewer and water rates, when you look at increasing those rates by 1%, that's going to generate funds for sewer, $71,858, and for water, $24,802. Next, I'd like to hand it off to Nick Stone, our Public Works Director.
Thanks, Natalie. The recommended changes that I've got here, the first one is to reclassify the Public Works Superintendent to Deputy Director. This is due to we're experiencing all kinds of regulatory increases on a pretty regular basis from both the state and the federal levels. And this reclassification would allow that position to serve with some of the reporting requirements and different tasks that go along with that. The next one is add 3 additional utility service specialists. Right now, we currently have one utility service specialist. He takes care of all the state and federal water sampling on a weekly basis, quarterly, some of it's triannual for the lead and copper. He inspects all the backflows. He does all the fog inspections, that's fats, oils, and greases for, to prevent fats from going into the sewer system so they don't have to have issues downstream. The addition of these three bodies, the hope would be is that they could assist with some things that we're not doing right now. Some of that's proactive maintenance of fire hydrants. Right now, we fix fire hydrants when we hear that there's a problem with them. If these guys can go out, a requirement for this would be a water distribution certificate, but the hope would be that these new utility service specialists could go out, maintain hydrants, flush hydrants, make sure that they're operational when the fire department goes there to turn them on, and that we're not getting calls about a hydrant that's out of service. The other thing these positions would be doing would be proactively exercising and maintaining some of the valves for our water system. Something that we have some challenges with is if there's a water main break and the valves to isolate that section haven't been exercised for a period of time, then we run into problems. Sometimes those, when you're driving around, you see a valve box out there. If nobody's cleaned it out for a while, it's full of sediment, it's full of debris, it's decaying that valve. Those valves are about $15,000 to $20,000 a piece to replace. But these guys would be going around sucking those out, just turning them, exercising them, and extending the useful life of those. And then that's also going to help us if there's any issues with the water main break. We'll be able to isolate a smaller section of line and not impact as many residents. Like some of the bigger ones, I know that over on, where was that one at? Oh, it was over at Pacific Street, that we had to go out a couple of valves and impact more people than we needed to for that, if we'd been maintaining those. And then the other program would be a reclassification for maintenance workers. Basically what this program would be is, right now if somebody's classified as a maintenance worker 1, if they obtain a water distribution or sewer collection certificate and they'd add positive performance evaluations for the period preceding that they'd get advanced. Next slide. And the next slide just details what our current staffing levels are. And Melissa.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I'm Melissa, the city engineer and also director of the engineering department. Within the engineering department, we have 2 divisions, the engineering division and the water reclamation facility. Over the last few years, we've had a lot of employee turnover at the water reclamation facility. So what we have included in the study is some personnel changes that will ensure employee retention. One of the positions that we did not have filled for a long time was the chief plant operator. And we were very lucky last year to get Michael on board. And one of the first tasks that I assigned him was to look at our staffing and what do we need at the plant to make sure that we're going to have the employees that we need to run the facility. And so I'm going to hand it over to Michael, and he's going to talk about the succession planning that he's been working on.
Thank you. Just a quick background. I've been in the water and the sewer industry for over 30 years, both as an engineering consultant and as a public employee. My last position was the Director of Water and Sanitation for the County of Ventura. So I've done a lot of succession planning, I've done a lot of budgeting in my time. And when I did first get this job, I was tasked to create a succession plan for the wastewater treatment plant because we were having issues keeping employees and also the staffing was not adequate. So I don't know if you can see that slide. If we can go back to slide 14. So on the left-hand side, you have the existing organization chart. If you look at the top of that organization chart, you have a lot of senior level and managerial staff, and right off the bat, it became clear that we needed more bees and less beekeepers. And so I've made a recommendation to make that less top heavy and have more people doing more things. And I want to get into one of the positions that's very important, and is the level 3 operator. So we have a classification of a treatment plant that you have to be at least state certified at a level 3 to be able to actually operate the plant. And so that is a very, also a very highly specialized class. It's a journey level class for a wastewater operator. The state certification exam is very difficult. A lot of people have a hard time passing that if they don't have a traditional college education. So it could be very challenging to attract and retain people of that level, especially with a city that has such a small economy of scale and might not be able to offer some of the same salaries that some of the larger agencies can offer. So that's, and so if we lose our operator 3s, that puts us at a very high risk of disrupting the continuity of succession. I guess my position, the city has had a hard time keeping and retaining someone as the chief plant operator, probably because of some of those same reasons. But there's a lot of people that, you know, want to live in the town that they've been in and want to work in the town that they've been in. And so one of my designs was, how can we maintain that continuity of that line of succession, so eventually those 3s become 4s, and then they become able to take over when I'm gone, because I'm not going to be here forever. So that's one of the weaknesses that I found when I did the analysis. The other was, there was no, if you had a chief plant operator, there was no current position filled that would provide a redundancy. So if that chief operator leaves for whatever reason, you need someone that has a level 4 certificate to actually administer the plant, do all the state reporting. That's a legal requirement by the state. And so those operators are harder to get than the level 3 operators, also another highly specialized class. So, so what we did, actually, and before I move over to what we did, the third weakness that I saw was, we had a senior maintenance mechanic, and that mechanic has been with the city for at least 20 years and was actually there when we had the only employee there that was there for the last upgrade in 2000, that finished up in 2009. So that employee has all the institutional knowledge of how everything is maintained, how everything works, and so I saw an immediate need to request another maintenance mechanic staff, so that person can learn from that mechanic for the 12 to 18 months that we're going to be able to retain that mechanic before he retires. Also, one mechanic is not able to keep up on the maintenance that we need to do, and like Dave said, we have a $35 million investment, which is now, it's getting close to 20 years old, and a lot of those components have reached the end of their useful life, and what we're trying to do is extend the life of the equipment that we do have to try to run this facility as economically as possible. So if we could go to, actually, let's stay on this slide. If you look to the right side, this is the proposed chart. And you can see that we had a current lead operator position that was never filled. It's my goal to try to fill that position with someone with a grade 4, hopefully coming from our facility. The other piece is creating senior operator positions, to where if someone gets their grade 3, they have a place to go to where they can start to be trained by that lead operator about how to be the lead operator. I'm training the lead operator how to be a CPO, so we're maintaining that line of succession. And the modest increases that are proposed in this study will help us to become somewhat competitive with some of the local wastewater agencies. If I can, like I've always said, if I can get us close, I can talk about quality of life. The city of Placerville is a wonderful place to work. This is actually the best place I've ever had as a job. I actually really like my job here. And so I was born and raised here, so it feels really good and noble to help your community. And so that's the pitch that I can give, and I think that pitch lands better if we're a little closer and a little bit more competitive with the other agencies. So as you see, what we're proposing is Chief Plan Operator, fill that lead operator position. And so that lead operator position is important as if I leave unexpectedly, get hit by a car, what have you, you've retained your redundancy for the management of that facility. That lead operator can also cover shifts for the seniors and the threes. So hopefully there'll be a large overtime savings. So that's a very important position to fill. Creating senior operator positions for when someone gets their level 3 and they get enough experience, they can start getting introduced to being able to manage a shift. So it's another step in that line of succession. And then we have our operator 2 positions, and we also propose to allow them, if they can get their level 3 certifications, that we'll pay them not at the senior rate, but at the level 3 rate. So there's somewhere for them to go, and we can help retain them, because that level 3 is that highly specialized class that we want to retain. Also, because we're not doing our own NPDES permit laboratory testing, the city has wisely ended their ELAP certification, which was very costly, very time intensive. It's much more efficient just to utilize a private lab for some of the samples that we have to send out. So we've downgraded the lab director position to just a lab tech, which is a much lower position. This lab tech will help the treatment operators run their process control tests they need to successfully run the facility, and then be able to work with that private lab to get our NPDES information updated. And then the 2 mechanics that I had mentioned to maintain that $35 million, what's left of that $45 million investment. If we want to go to the next slide, I don't know if you can see this or not. This is basically what I've been talking about this whole time, and the dotted lines are internal promotion possibilities, which is really important for such a small agency to try to promote internally, and you can see the clear line of succession, and this is basically our 5-year plan. So we have already started, and we're in the process of hiring another maintenance mechanic, so that maintenance mechanic can study under our existing maintenance mechanic. And we're also in the process of getting a laboratory analyst hired. And next I'll be looking towards a level 4 operator to provide that redundancy in management. And I don't think we need to go to the next slide. I think I spoke about that. And so you'll see a net increase of 1 position. I will say that when I did some of the math, and Dave can add to this, when we look at what the city has had to pay for a private contractor to come in with his grade 4 to run the facility, and what we've paid in, I think, some of the overtime that we paid over the amount of that time, I think we're very close. So this is kind of a win-win situation. We might be out a little bit more, but I think it's very close, and I think this will serve the city well, because it's very expensive to have to continue to hire people and train people, and then they go away. I think this will help retain the employees that we need to retain and have a really well-functioned and, most importantly, well-maintained facility for the city's investment for years to come.
Thank you, Michael. Now, switching gears to our water rates, we have Michael DeGroot, Vice President of Bartle Wells, our consultant, to present this. Thank you.
Thank you. So starting with your water rates, because Placerville is a public water utility, you are not allowed to make a profit. So every dollar that you collect from rates goes back into the water enterprise. So this slide shows you the proportion of every dollar that you spend and where it goes in terms of the operating costs of the water enterprise system. So you can see that 43 cents of the dollar is going to personnel, 33 cents is going to supplies, 16 cents to overhead, 5 cents to services, and 2 cents to equipment, contingency, debt service, and other expenses. So this slide shows you the financial position of the water enterprise. And you can see that the green line at the top is your expenditures. And your expenditures are currently around $3 million a year for the water enterprise. And you can see that it's projected to increase over time to about $4.5 million over the next 5 years. And you can see that the blue line are your water enterprise revenues. And you can see under a base case scenario where there's no increase and your revenues are flat, you're projected to have a deficit of $171,000 in fiscal year 25-26. And that deficit with no increase would ramp up to $560,000 in 26-27, all the way up to about 1.8 million in year 5. So this really, makes the case that you need to be increasing your rates. So this slide shows your current and proposed water rates, and we're focusing on the single-family residential customer. And for water, your rate is composed of 2 components. You've got a fixed bi-monthly charge of $25.73, and then a commodity charge, which is in addition to that base charge, and that's per 100 cubic foot. And 100 cubic foot is about 748 gallons, and that's $5.17 currently. Now, you also have a Lifeline class, and this is for low-income customers that can qualify under PG&E Care or other programs where they can prove that they are disadvantaged, and they have a flat 25% discount compared to the normal rate. Now, we're proposing a series of 5 increases each year beginning in April. And you can see that the first year would be 15%, the second year 15%, 14%, 12%, and 12%. So that base charge would go from $25.73 to $29.59 in the first year, and then up to $48.66 in year 5. And the commodity charge would go from $5.17 to $5.95 in the first year, up to $9.78. And so this is really an across-the-board increase on the rates that you currently have in place.
Before we go to the next slide, I think it's important, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a healthy part of that 15% is us paying EID.
Exactly.
12% of that 15% is EID. And I'll leave you on a little secret. When they raise rates, they don't blink an eye, all right? No, hold on. They don't blink an eye. But that 12% of that 15, so the 3% is us, and that's all that stuff you were talking about. But the lion's share of this is the fact that they're just charging us more money every year for water. They've increased it by 12%. All right, I'm done.
Right, and
Well, but do we want to take comments?
Well, sometimes it's relevant when you're going.
Okay, that's fine. All right, that's up to the mayor.
Yeah, I'm open to allowing questions at this point from the public, if there was one.
That implies that the dollar, 12% of the dollar is going to EID. And that is not the case, is it correct?
No.
As I understand it?
Let the guy from Bartle and James do it.
12% of the dollar, the water dollar, does not go to EID. Is that not correct?
so you purchase all of your water from EID.
Right.
And so if you go back to that previous slide, of every dollar that you pay towards the rates, 43% is going to personnel, 33% to supplies, and that line item would include the EID wholesale water.
Okay, so it would be a third of the 12%, not 12%, am I correct? I'm curious. I don't understand, because you're saying that of the dollar, 33%, part of that is EID, right?
No, I don't think so.
It's all EID supply?
Yeah, so,
Hold on, the dollar, this dollar of a buck, we're gonna pay, somebody pays $1. Well, I don't know, that's not the right one. This dollar is the difference between the wholesale rate that we pay EID. That just goes out, that's money. Like, if we buy $100 worth of something, if we charge $100, I'm trying to do
You're
math in my
saying-
head now, which is dangerous, 12%, most of that goes to EID.
So are you saying right here on this dollar, the supplies is EID?
No.
A portion of it is. No, he said supplies.
But you're bumping it, the entire dollar, by 15%. And you're saying 12 of that is EID cost.
No.
That's what you just said.
Well, no, the EID is not in this dollar.
Well, okay, let me just go back to what you said. You said that 15% increase,
Right.
12 of that is because of EID.
Yes.
And I'm questioning whether that is really true.
Yes, it is true. Because because you pay EID off the top. They deliver 100 feet of water, you pay them X number of dollars. I'm assuming that this dollar is what it costs us to deliver that increment of water that we purchase. So in the rate increase, this would be like that 3% essentially.
Well, without knowing what percent of that 33% EID is represented by, we can't tell.
it's 27 cents, so it's included in that 33 cents in the
So
supplies.
you're saying
and-
27 cents of that 33 is EID water?
Exactly, and so that portion is going up 12% per year, but there's a lot of other expenses, so you also have to factor in that there's been zero increase over the last 4 years, and during that 4 years, we've seen costs increase. So we're talking about cost of labor, cost of chemicals, cost of supplies, cost of electricity. So you've seen 0% increase for 4 years, and so a large part of this is also catching up from that period.
Okay, the only thing I am questioning is whether what the gentleman said, which is 12% of that 15 is due just to EID. And I would like to know whether that's true or not.
It's a large
Okay.
portion of
Well,
the
then-
increase.
What's a large portion?
I
I mean,
don't
you
have
guys
the
have done a
exact-
great report here,
Yeah.
but it seems to me you're missing that when you make that kind of a
I
statement.
apologize. We don't have the exact number, but we can provide that at a later point.
I may have
Okay.
provided some bad math, but a healthy chunk of the cost increase is because EID is charging us more for water.
Yeah, and I'll just say, EID has increased their rates every year, and we had a 4-year pause, and they've increased their rates 12% to operate. And so we're increasing ours 15, but as Michael mentioned, that was with a pause for 4 years, so.
What were the 4-year increases with
So starting last year, they're raising their rates 12% per year for the next 5 years. It varied. I want to say between 4 and 8%. The other piece that we didn't talk about, Michael kind of touched on it. During the Great Recession, everybody remember the prices shooting up? Remember when you could buy a pickup truck for $40,000, now it's $80,000? During that period of time, we had significant, what I call hyperinflation, between 2020 and 2022. So the rate study we did prior in 2018 assumed 3 to 4% growth, when it really was between 7 and 15. So, in other words, what we assumed in the previous study, we had no way of knowing there was going to be a pandemic, number one, but it was more rational. The hyperinflation, there was no way we could assume that. But my point is, we're making up for lost time during the pandemic.
So moving on to,
Oh, we have another
Yeah, okay, there it's gone, sort of. My issue with it, honestly, I can understand the price increases to a degree, but regardless of what's in the paperwork, EID charges about half of what we do. And they're the ones supplying us with the water. So why is it so less efficient for us to supply this than it is for EID?
So that's a good question, and you'll see later on in the presentation that your rates are heavily volumetric. So you actually have a large portion of that volumetric charge that's actually going to recover fixed operating costs. So if you think about in terms of your volumetric rate versus what you're paying for wholesale, that's not an apples to apples comparison because there's also fixed costs that you're adding in for your operation of your system.
Actually, if, you want to answer? Let me answer his question first, and then we can talk volumetric. So if you advance to slide 24 in your packet, you can see that Placerville is actually number 2 in this chart as far as cost at 1,200 cubic feet before the increase. And then after the increase, we're still lower than EID with the initial 15% increase. So, I'm sorry?
Yeah, we have a comparison coming up in the presentation. So we can move on. Oh, next, another question.
Two more questions and then.
One of the things that I notice is that, yeah, it's live, is that EID supplies a lot of agricultural water, which they charge a much lower rate for. And we are not, we don't do agricultural water. We are doing city water. So we're basically charging for drinking water quality, where EID has something else. So if their rates that you're seeing on Google are a matter of the combination between agricultural and city, then it's not a fair comparison. So it would be a much lower from EID if you're just looking at a bill that includes agriculture and city. The two don't measure out because agriculture takes a lot more volume than city does.
I think we have one additional question.
Yeah, the volumetric.
Now, as I read this chart, observation, in 5 years, prices will essentially double.
Yeah.
That's my observation.
We can continue with the presentation now.
And I'd just like to address what volumetric is. That's the rate per unit of water usage. So moving on to the next slide here, this shows you what the cost is for a typical single-family residential water bill using the average usage, which is 1,200 cubic feet. And this is for 2 months. So under your current rates, that's $87.77 for 2 months. And the lifeline is $65.86. So in April of 2026, the proposed rates would go to $100.94 for 2 months, and then gradually increasing up to $165 in year 5. The lifeline would go from $65.86 for 2 months to $75.74, and then gradually increase to $124.55. So this is the total bill taking into account the volumetric and the fixed charge. The next slide shows you what the bi-monthly bill impact would be for these users. So you can see the first increase would be $13.17 for 2 months for a regular user and $9.88 for 2 months for the Lifeline user. And then in year 2, it would be a $15.14 increase for regular user. And all the way into year 5, it'd be a $17.78 increase for 2 months. And you can see the Lifeline would go up $13.35 in the last year. So this next slide shows the regional comparison of your water rates that was referenced earlier. And this is for the typical single-family residential user for 2 months with a 5/8-inch meter and the average usage of 1,200 cubic feet for 2 months. And this was conducted in January of this year. And so you can see that the average for the region is $140.64. And the city of Placerville is well below that, currently at $87.77. Now,
We're going to continue the presentation, then I'll open up for comments again at the end.
Right, so on the survey, you can see the light shaded bar is the volumetric component, and the dark blue is the fixed charge. And so with that first increase, you would still be about $40 below the average bill for the region, and you'd be at $100.94 for 2 months. So even with that an increase, you're still well below average on the water rates. And you can see El Dorado Irrigation District is at $132.75, so you're well below El Dorado.
So back in 2018, one of the things we did is we went to a single tier. We used to have a 3-tier water schedule. And there was a decision, the Capistrano decision, that basically said we had a inclining block rate, or declining block rate, meaning that the more you use, or actually inclining. So the more you use, the higher the price went. That was found to be illegal. And I'll just say that in some agencies, that's seen as illegal, but EID still has an inclining block. So when you look at the rates, think of that too, depending on the consumption.
And so question?
I'm gonna not have questions at this point. We're gonna go to the end of the presentation, then we'll reopen it up for questions.
Okay. Great. So one other thing I wanted to point out is that the city of Placerville, your rate structure is heavily volumetric. So you can see the light shaded part is a large proportion of your bill, and it's much larger than a lot of the other agencies. So this really gives your customers control over their bill in terms of how much they use. The flip side is that you're more exposed to drought. And so the next slide talks about the proposed drought rates. So you currently have drought rates in place, which is a 15% increase on the volumetric rate. And that would only take effect if the city council were to declare a drought. So we're proposing to keep this drought rate in place just in case you need it. And it would just increase by the same percentages as your regular water rates. So you can see it would be 15% for the first 2 years, then 14%, and then the final 12% increases. So that's it for the water rates, and then moving on to sewer rates. Just like water, you're not allowed to make a profit. So every dollar that gets spent from your sewer rates goes directly into providing sewer service. And you can see that 40 cents on every dollar goes to personnel, 18% to services, 10 cents to supplies, 1 cent to overhead, and 32 cents to debt payments, equipment, transfers, contingency, and other expenses. And this next slide shows you the financial position of the sewer enterprise. So the green line is your expenses, and currently you can see that it's increasing from about $8 million a year, and over the 5 years that will exceed $10 million per year. And the blue line is your revenues, and this shows kind of a do-nothing scenario. So the blue line staying flat for the 5 years. And we're projecting a deficit of 209,000 in 25-26, and that would jump to 1.1 million in 26-27, and then ramp up to about 3.2 million in year 5. So this really makes the case that you need to increase your sewer rates. So this slide shows you your current and proposed sewer rates. So the rates for the single family are comprised of a base charge, and that's currently $205.81 for 2 months. And there's also a volumetric component, and this is based on winter usage. So we look at the either December or February of the prior year to calculate your winter usage, and that's $9.53 per 100 cubic foot. And then you've got the same 25% discount for Lifeline customers. And you can see that we're proposing an overall increase of 14% on April 2026, 9%, 7%, 7%, and 7%. So the next slide shows you the total bill, and for a typical user, that's $210.58, and then the Lifeline is $157.94 for 2 months, and this is based on the average usage of 800 cubic foot, and that would go up from $210 to $240 for 2 months in the first year, and then gradually increasing to $320 in year 5. The Lifeline would go from $157 to $180 in the first year, and then gradually ramp up to $240 in year 5. Right. So in terms of wastewater, the industry standard is to look at winter usage of water. So essentially what we're looking at is the winter usage, because it theoretically takes away the landscape usage. And so it's a better proxy than using your total usage during the summer. So this slide 31 shows the bi-monthly increase. And so you can see for a regular user, it's $29.48 for 2 months. And the Lifeline is $22.11 increase for 2 months. In this year 2, it's $21.60 increase for regular user and $16.20 increase for Lifeline. And then you can see all the way in year 5, it's $20.97 for regular user and $15.73 for the Lifeline customer.
What about the customer that's at work all 6, 7 days a week for 10 hours? We come home, we fill a bucket to wash our dishes. I don't even use a dishwasher. We don't even flush our toilets all night long until we do a PM in the morning, and you're still charging me these outrageous prices. Why is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for wastewater, most of the cost of a wastewater enterprise is actually fixed cost. So it's a lot of infrastructure to build out the system. You've got a wastewater treatment plant and many miles of lines of sewer pipelines. And you've also got fixed costs in terms of administration. And so when you really look at the sewer enterprise, I would say about 90 to 95% of the cost is actually a fixed cost. So it doesn't matter how much you flush your toilet, the city is still incurring the cost to maintain that service. And so many agencies are actually 100% fixed, and you'll see that on the survey. When you look at the dark green bar, that's the fixed component, and the light green is the volumetric component. And when we look at the region, only 2 agencies, El Dorado and Placerville, actually have a volumetric component on sewer rates. The rest of these agencies are 100% fixed charge. So in terms of the survey, you can see the average is 188.77, and you're currently at 210.58. And you're going to 240.06 in the first year.
I'm going to go ahead and continue the presentation. I will give you a chance to speak at the end.
You didn't give me a chance while Joe was talking.
We,
You interrupted me while ago.
yes, I am the mayor of the city.
House, and this is ridiculous of what my bills are.
I understand. I also have concerns. Okay, I don't make anything from this job. We're volunteers, yeah.
Basically volunteers.
But I would like to hear the presentation, and then I would like to have a discussion at the end on our council members and hear our council members' questions, and then move on to public comment. So I would like to move forward with that process for everyone, and I will give the public another chance to ask any questions, to make any comments that you may have. That's the order that we're going to go in from here on out. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to comment on this just a little bit because the city is a little on the high side. You ask yourself, why is that? We're in the foothills. We have relatively cool climate most of the year, part of the year. We discharge into Haintown Creek, which is a seasonal creek. If it weren't for our water reclamation facility that treats the sewer, Haintown Creek would go dry near the plant, below the plant. So because we've continually discharged into the creek, it creates habitat, and because there's habitat, we have to meet certain standards. For example, we actually have to cool the effluent or the water coming out of the plant certain times of the year to make sure that it's good for the bugs and bunnies, if you will. The other piece of it is because it's a small creek, the dilution level is extremely high. In other words, we have to, the parts per, is it parts per billion or parts per trillion? I forget, Michael. Parts per billion. So we actually, the effluent has to be cleaner than elsewhere. Like if they're discharging into the American River, it's different because it's a larger body of water. So the point is that we're set at a higher standard. It's more expensive, quite frankly. So we have that to deal with. Moving on to what would happen if the rates are not increased. And so we talked about fixed costs. 41% of your sewer enterprise fund is just debt service, principal and interest, paying off the loan that we were required to pay for in order to do the improvements to the plant. So potentially we could default on that loan. Services would have to be cut. There could be increased exposure to state fines. If we don't meet the standards of our MPDS permit, we could. It's more than the debt service on the loan, for example. Experience a growing number of water line breaks, sewer line backups, damage to private property. So it's not trying to scare you, it's just what is the end result? And I'll tell you, for many years, up until the early 2000s, the rates were extremely low. Well, there was a cost to that because the deferred maintenance wasn't being done. Now we're doing the deferred maintenance. We're actually getting a handle on our systems. So there is some good news. We have some options for the council to consider to potentially reduce the proposed rate increases. One is the delay of implementation of the new positions. That isn't really a recommendation by staff. We're just saying you could continue the phase-in of those positions. We did spread them across the 5-year rate increase rates. So we did think of that, but we could delay them, but there would be a cost to that. The other thing would be, would be eliminate the vacant home sewer discount. Now, this discount is actually not a city policy. There's no written document that says we're supposed to do this. So what it is if a homeowner their home's vacant, and I'm not advertising this, I'm just explaining it, so trying not to anyway. If the house is vacant, they can demonstrate that there's very little water showing that nobody's living there. We will provide a credit towards their base charge for sewer. This typically happens with second homes, vacation homes, rentals, those kind of things. So people that may have a few extra, a few extra change there, here and there. So the annual cost to that, to our sewer enterprise fund, is $37,525 this year. So when you look at a rate increase for sewer, that's about 0.5%. So in other words, if we eliminated that program, we could reduce the sewer increase by about 0.5%. Reform water leak adjustment procedures. The city is very liberal in its ability to provide credit. So we have old city, a lot of old houses with old plumbing, and we've been very understanding of that situation. However, that means, so what happens is if you have a water line break, we analyze your account, we look at your usage from the previous year, and we look at the delta, the difference between this year's water consumption and last year's, and we basically say, we'll credit you 50% of your overage, which is very, giving. But there's no limit to how many times you can do that. EID allows you to do that once every 5 years. They have newer communities in their district, so that probably isn't a good mix for us, but we could do that. But perhaps every 3 years, but not every year or every couple months or every pay period or every billing period. So that could save us $92,000 if we were to completely not do adjustments. If we, went to say like a 3-year, it could save us about $46,000, something like that. And that is almost a 2% reduction in sewer rates. So that's a fair amount. Water rates, thank you. Consider a credit card convenience fee. So currently we do not charge a convenience fee for credit card. We actually want people to use their credit card, so I'm not a huge proponent of this, but it is something we could do to raise revenue. So right now our bank fees for credit cards is about $95,000. So if we were to create a convenience fee, but again, that's $1 out your pocket and you're paying it another. So that's per year. So the equivalent to the sewer enterprise fund is $67,616 or $28,182. But if you don't use a credit card, that means if you're paying by check, you're kind of subsidizing that cost, if you will. Evaluate the lifeline discount. So again, we're not recommending anything. We understand everybody's got a different budget, but 25% is a pretty fair discount, and the annual cost of that, both water and sewer, is $100,000. Sewer is about $75,000. Water's $25,000. So if that discount were adjusted down, you could save some money there. So, and there may be other things. We're open. Staff Natalie and I have looked in. Natalie, thank you for your help with this. She did a lot of number crunching, her and her team. So very creative. So. Next steps. So if there's any adjustments the council would like us to consider in the rates, we would entertain those. Any other ideas of, adjusting the rates? Our plan is to have another discussion at your February 10th city council meeting. We would actually ask you, if you're good with it, to issue a Proposition 218 notice. That's a 45-day notice that would go to ratepayers to saying, ratepayers, this is what we're proposing. Ratepayers could protest if they'd like, and the notices would be mailed by the time they would need to get it by February 28th. And then we would have a public hearing April 14th, which is your first meeting in April. We also, and then of course you would have to, at that point, either adopt or not. If you adopt the rates, then they would be implemented effective April 16th, and then that would affect the July bill. They would be used to calculate the July 2026 bill. We plan on providing additional information to customers in March in the utility bill, and Q&As, whatnot, through social media and other methods. So anyway, that's all we have.
Great. I'm going to ask for any council member questions, or if you'd like to make comments before I reopen it to the public. Anybody here? All right, great. We will open it back up to the public at this time for questions and comments.
Good evening. So I had a couple questions and comments. One is, what's the possibility of selling the gray water rather than running it all down the creek? So that's a consideration. Reusing the gray water, especially with new builds, all of it should be going into gray water and reprocessed and sold back to agriculture, you know? Maybe a city sales tax to offset sewer and water rates, so to reclaim paying off that bond. You know, it's to the point where our water and sewer rates are getting so expensive, I don't want to live in the city anymore. And I've been here for 40 years, and it shouldn't be like that. And I know costs are going up, but there's got to be other ways to fix this problem. When it rains, are we processing all this water that runs down? Just a question.
Yeah, if staff would like to answer questions, I'm going to be pretty informal here on this part, so go ahead.
One of the questions that I heard was, well, why don't we recycle the water, sell it, you know, get some revenue, right? Well, there's a couple of issues, unfortunately. I've looked at that myself. That was the first thing when I had my job interview. I'm like, hey, we need to, you know, get out of the creek and let's sell the water. So part of the problem is when you've created an environment over a certain amount of years, the state actually forces us to keep a certain amount of water in the creek. And so to be able to pull that water, because we've created the environment, now we have to sustain it, which is, so it's unfortunate bureaucracy, because we could really use some revenue, but that's the reality of what we're dealing with. So we have to keep that water in there, and getting out of an NPDES permit, it can be very difficult, and so it's very expensive. And you also mentioned stormwater. That's another thing that I would love to be able to just capture stormwater, because that's and unfortunately, you actually have to have a water right to utilize stormwater, and we do not have a water, to my knowledge, to capture and utilize stormwater. Now, the state has done that under some drought conditions when we have a lot of water coming in. I think it was a couple of years ago. They were letting some public agencies bank that water into the ground, but it's a completely different animal. So I can speak intelligently on at least those two subjects. But yes, it would be nice if we could capture some of the water. It'd be nice if we could recycle the water. And then if we were able, let's say the state said, okay, you can recycle all your water now, then you're looking at $10-20 million to put the pipe in the ground, the tanks, to supply it to whoever that supplier would need. And really the Achilles heel of recycled water projects, because I've been through a lot of them, is you have to store that water through the winter, because there's a very small window when people actually want to utilize that water for crops or the golf course, and so you have to store all that water. So we'd have to store, 200 million gallons during the wet season, have to have a reservoir that large and in the environment. So it's a more complicated animal than that. I would love to be able to recycle the water, but I think given where we are with regulations, that would not be a possibility. It's yeah.
We could save the water. Oh, I'm sorry, our governor lets it go out to the ocean all the time for some stupid fish.
Yeah, I don't have any control over that, but
Yeah, I know.
So.
See, it's supposed to be green. Everybody talks about, let's go green, but yet we don't want to conserve stuff. You have all the tools to look into this and get this going, but you won't. No, you won't.
Yeah, I can't comment on that, on your opinion. So, the other piece that we're looking at, it's really tough with with rates, because I've been through a lot of rate studies, and nobody wants to pay more. I think one of the issues that we have in the city of Placerville is we have such a small community, such a small number of people that has to pay for large treatment facilities and large pipe in the ground. Now, if we all lived in Sacramento, our costs would be lower because we have, 500, 600,000 people paying for that. And so the economy of scale is really what, is a struggle for the city. And, you're all owners of this infrastructure. We're just merely administering it for you. So, when you have a house or you have infrastructure, you have to maintain it, and we have to keep it going, and we have to operate it correctly. And so it's really, we're doing our best to maintain your infrastructure.
There was a question about sales tax and the use of sales tax to help reduce the rates. That's something we did look at the Measure HL committee level. So you have a watchdog group that monitors those monies and the use. And we've had several really good discussions about, for example, the additional positions that we're looking at rolling out. Do we use some more Measure H for that? The concern is that money is primarily right now being used for projects, and it doesn't really go far enough for projects. So the concern is once we start using it for positions, it would be very hard to claw back. So, but that is an option the council could consider with the consultation with Measure HL.
Measure H specifically says you will not use this for personnel. And Measure L has the same language. So it is strictly for the only personnel costs that can be used for either Measure H or Measure L are ones directly related to implementing projects.
Yeah. Thank you. Sue's on our Measure HL committee and founding member, actually. The way we recommended doing it is basically, and Measure H can pay for water, sewer, debt service, is for it to pay even more debt service, thereby freeing up rate revenue for those positions. But again, the recommendation was not to do that.
First of all, thank you for your service, all of you. Appreciate this and your report. The question that I have is related to the two graphs that are both showing the dilemmas. I'm pretty clear, I think, about a lot of what's happening to water rates, especially with EID's pricing going up. So the expenditures line that goes from slide 20, almost from 3 million up to 4.5 million. I'm assuming a bunch of it is that EID rate increase. In the sewer area, it was presented without, I don't understand where the expenditure is going from 8 million up to over 10 million. What's the increase in expenditure on the sewer side of the equation?
So I believe this is the slide that you were referring to. So the increase from 209 to 3.2 million, so you have increases in electricity, and we all know our PG&E bills aren't going down, right? Our bill is about $600,000 at the plant alone. And then we have personnel. We have a union, and we have to have collective bargaining, negotiations, and health insurance, for example. I think we had 13% in our health insurance this year. So things like that far surpass regular inflation. And then just chemicals, different things the plant has to use, services, so on and so forth. So it all adds up. And again, we're making up for lost time because of the hyperinflation during the pandemic. So the rates that we have currently and previous really weren't keeping up because of what went on during the pandemic. Thank you.
Is it safe to say the majority of those increases then are related to personnel? I mean, most of what you said was related to
a fair amount. There's another piece to it. So we refinanced our 2006 wastewater bonds, and that's actually going to save us $5 million over the life of the bond. The debt service was it wasn't where it needed to be, so we did accelerate a little bit on that. So the debt service goes up just a little bit, and I think next year is our last year of an increase, and then it levels off. The debt service is the same every year after that.
So thank you again for everything you've done to pull this together. I feel like something is hidden in this report as we separated out water and we separate out sewer. We, as homeowners, have to pay both, and the increases are in both. And I would appreciate a chart that shows the two categories together for the real cost to us, even without usage, because as I'm doing the math on the base of water and the base of sewer, I'm seeing my base, if I don't use anything, is $231.54 every 2 months currently, and it will go up to $361.95 in 5 years, which is an increase of $130.41. I would like the city council to see those numbers in front of them for reality's sake, because it does equal $782.46 a year increase in 5 years.
To me, it seems to me that I understand if EID's water charge goes up, you have to pay more. I understand that concept. But what I don't understand is what percentage that represents in each of these annual raises. The other thing I'd just like to point out is these are 15 and 12% increases. You know what? I live Social Security. You know what I get? 3%. So where am I supposed to make up these differences? And the other thing is that you're only adding one position, but one position is probably what, with benefits over $100,000? You said little, but one position, what would you guess? Who handles the?
Yeah, it's net. I mean, we can provide that number. I don't have it on the top of my head, but it's the movement of various positions.
Yeah, okay.
The net result is the one
You
total
average one
net.
position up, and that with benefits, that's going to be a lot of money, okay? And I think that you guys should be working to decrease these rates as much as you possibly can, because at some point in time, we're all going to cry uncle and leave.
That's it, right there.
I mean, people cannot continue to take the brunt of these raises. I mean, that's just the truth.
Thank you for your comments.
At one point, you stated something about the small population funding all of this. What is going on with commercial water and sewer rates, and how is any portion of the brunt being covered by those? And I know, like, Smith Flathouse is closing in a couple days due to issues with cost of doing business in California. So I'm not trying to run off our small businesses by any stretch of the imagination, but people that come into this community traveling through on Highway 50, flush the toilets at the restaurants, drink the water, or don't. How are our commercial businesses and those people covering part of the cost?
Great question. So in 2005, we adopted new sewer rates, and it was based on state standards of two things, strength and flow. So strength is the biological impact to our wastewater treatment plant. And Michael can speak to this better than I can because he's the expert. But essentially, a bar, for example, has a higher strength because of the yeast in it. Restaurants with grease that goes into the system, it's very costly to process the grease and oils. So you'll see, and there's a chart in the packet, the handouts, with the commercial rates. And I will tell you, I think mostly it's residents here tonight, your rates are proportionally much less than commercial. But to your point, in regards to commerce and the economy, it is a big impact on our businesses, especially restaurants and fast food.
I have two questions. One, when are you going to take a look at and make decisions about any of those rate reduction options? And then two, if the rates are adopted and then there's some other ideas that surface in the next year or year after that. Is it even possible that the rates that you're planning for could be, the rate increases would be reduced? Or is that just a wish?
That's a great question. So we're asking the council to adopt a 5-year rate structure. So those are the maximum rates. If they adopt those rates, those are the maximum rates, and there's no protest, by the way, that we can pass on to the customer until there's new rates. Each year, we'll bring those rates to the council right before they're implemented, and we did this the last time. So a few months before, we say, council, this is what we're planning on doing. Are you okay with us doing this? It could be, no promises. Let's say we had some significant growth in the city where there's more customers to kind of share the pie. We could forego increases, or we could pass on a lesser increase. There's been times, and during the Great Recession, we did that. I wouldn't recommend that so that we stay the course, but that is an option the council could consider. And as far as the options, it really depends on what the council wants to do. So if the council directs staff to look at these options, particular ones, we can provide rates based on those assumptions.
And I guess my question to that is, when will that happen, where the council makes a decision on those?
Staff is hoping for input tonight, but it could be that they need to think on it, and then at the February 10th meeting, provide direction to staff.
Will we see the modifications based on our recommendations and what we have talked about here tonight before the council votes on it?
That's up to the city council.
Yeah, I mean, we will provide, there's a schedule in here, but we'll provide directions to staff tonight of any changes that we want after comments are made here, and then it will come back to us, and during that, it'll be in a public meeting. I think you've got the schedule here.
Yeah, so I just want to say, on page 34, the options that we're being presented with, and those are what we want to hear from you, also what your thoughts are on, because that's the direction we're going to give, and I haven't really heard anybody talk about those options and how they feel about them on page 34.
That February 10th is just authorizing a notice. It's not authorizing the actual rates. So we'll have numerous more public meetings before we have a chance to make any action on approving the rates. It'll be at least, it looks like, I think, 3 more meetings that you'll have an opportunity before we actually make the decision. I don't know.
Yeah, the March water bill, we can provide an update and, additional information. So, and it's really, this is just the beginning of the discussion. We wanted to lay out kind of a framework that the council could consider, but it could take a little longer. Thank you. Oh, one other thing, real quick. I just wanted to share, so the Sewer Enterprise Fund, by year 2930, our debt service principal and interest alone is $3,174,000. So if everybody in the city of Placerville stopped flushing their toilets, we'd still have that cost. We'd also have standby staff, all those other costs. So when you think about fixed costs, that's a big part of it.
Okay. No, just a question. Are there any surrounding cities or communities with reasonable water rates that have any ideas we could swipe? Kind of like, well, these guys, their rates are this. What do they do? I already went through school. I was never above looking at somebody else's paper. I mean, nobody ever cares. So are there any ideas out there that we could swipe or borrow?
Yeah, I just want to maybe have staff comment on state mandates, whereas a lot of these things that the sewer plant that we had to build based on what the state made us build, talking about putting the water back into the creek, it has to be plus or minus 2 degrees of what the current creek water is, as well as we send water down to Sacramento cleaner than we got it from the Sierras. That's all state mandated, and the things that we have to do in some of the costs. I don't know exactly what the costs, but I don't know if staff wants to say more about state mandates, but those are important to understand, that we didn't just come up with this stuff. The state is making us do a lot of these things.
Okay, so earlier I mentioned the whole issue as far as difference in prices on EID. And I know that you guys' charts show something different, but from everything that I've seen other than your charts, EID is generally charging about half, 60% roughly, of what we pay in the city. If that's not something that we can perform ourselves at that rate, what would be the 5-year cost of having them take over services?
I am looking. I just brought up the El Dorado Irrigation bi-monthly base charges and their rates. And I think the one that's closest to what we had was the single-family residential 5/8 inch 3/4 meter or something like that, if I recall. Now, I don't know exactly where that number came from, but the number on here is almost $100. So that's not a 60% or 40. It's like, and I might be doing apples and oranges here because you might have compared it to something completely different. But I am looking at EID's rate schedule.
Well, I think they are significantly cheaper than we are on sewer specifically.
Yeah, on the sewer side, they're way cheaper. Yeah,
I
no one's
maybe-
arguing that.
I think maybe that's where the confusion is because
Yeah.
we separated out these two costs, and on water, we're actually cheaper than EID. But on sewer, we are significantly more expensive. And I think maybe that's where that disconnect is. So, yeah.
Right.
Correct.
Well,
Oh,
But I want to make sure we were talking about the same thing, and that's, yeah.
From a consumer standpoint, it doesn't really matter which part is which.
okay.
And so that's, yeah, absolutely a great caveat that, I'm not saying it's just in the water, just in the sewer. I'm just saying what the consumer is charged is on average about half of it.
I agree that the big portion is the sewer. That's where the difference is. So let's look at that. Let's say we did something like you just suggested. What would that look like? Where would the sewer go? They would either have to run a main line down to Deer Creek, which is not going to be cheap, or EID would take over our plant. They pay their employees more than we do. We pay our employees. So I don't think your costs are going to go down.
Because they have a lot more users. They have economies of scale. They have the whole county that isn't on a septic. You know, a lot of EID, like my mother-in-law, she gets EID water, but she's got a septic system. So, no. No, it doesn't work that way. No, you'd still have to run the plant, or you'd have to pump everything to Deer Creek, and that won't be cheap, and you'd end up paying for that. I mean, yeah. Well, that assumes that EID would allow you to do that. That's the other thing. You know, they might come into the city and they'd go, well, no, you guys will pay for this improvement. In fact, there might even be a nexus issue with even doing that. I mean, I'm speculating now, but there might be where you can't do that, where if you were to pick up all these sewer connections out of Placerville and pump them over to Deer Creek, we would be on the dime. So, you know, right. I think I don't wake up in the morning trying to figure out new and creative ways to piss everybody off in town. Okay? And I understand some folks live real close to their checkbooks. I had a time in my life when I lived real close to my checkbook. And I still do, mostly out of habit. There are only 2 of us in the house I live in. I don't know how many times we flush the toilet, I don't count, but I don't imagine I do it a lot. Everybody always tells us we should run the government like a business. Well, this is a business. This business is providing water and providing sewer treatment. And we've shown you what that business costs. And most of it is mandated on us. But the old sewage treatment plant, when the state of California came after us, because I was around in those days, we were violating a whole bunch of laws. Now, you could say they were persnickety, but it needed to be dealt with. To the degree we ended up dealing with, that's open to discussion. And yes, there wouldn't be a Hangtown Creek below the sewage treatment plant if it wasn't for us. And that's the reality we live with. I think we should do every one of these rate reduction options because I don't know why we let people have, Natalie, 6 leaks a year, 5 leaks a year. Now, they're a minority. Most people are honest. Most people pay their bills. Most people don't jack us around. But you would be amazed at the number of people. When we finally asked people to prove that they should be on the Lifeline rate, it dropped by like a third. Because there are people who just come and walk in the door and look at you, and they had enough money to pay their sewer and water bill, but they just looked at it and said, yep, I'm on the Lifeline rate. When we finally made them provide proof, a third of them. I have no idea. It's the PG&E. We use the PG&E thing, and I have no idea what the PG&E Lifeline rate is.
I was just going to ask to clarify on that.
Yeah, it's the PG&E Lifeline.
Correct.
So basically, they had to come in with a PG&E bill and prove that they were on the PG&E Lifeline.
So PG&E did the verification, not us.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah. We let them do the paperwork, and at least a third of them said, no, you can't.
So you asked us to address that rate reduction option and our thoughts on those options. I feel like I don't have enough information on the delaying the implementation of the new positions. It seemed rational what they were addressing. But and 37,000 seems nothing with the millions we're talking about. But a vacant home sewer discount, you're talking about all the cost is maintaining the system, and those homes still have that same system. So I think that it makes sense that you eliminate that.
We have a vote, one vote.
The reform.
Everybody, hands up. There we go. It's unanimous.
Yes, this is good. This is helpful. Reforming the water leak adjustment procedures. I know we've lived here 16 years now, and we took advantage of it once on a leak we were totally unaware of and had the adjustment. Hearing that people can do it every single month shocks me. I think considering a one time a year or once every other year as a forgiveness piece, I think is logical. We do have older homes and things happen, and oftentimes in the older homes, we're not aware of what water is going on underneath that we can't see. So that's my point on that. I really respectfully ask that you do not add a credit card convenience fee. I love the fact that we have finally navigated that we can pay online, and the convenience of that, but increasing our rates and then adding a credit card convenience fee on top of that just feels like it's adding insult to injury. And I think that that is not in your best interest to add to try to save a few bucks in that area. The evaluating the Lifeline discount policy, we don't take advantage of that. We don't need it, so I really don't. But if have much of a say. But if lots of places are doing more like 20%, why are we using the highest percent discount available if we can recoup some money that way?
Just dealing with leaks and stuff. More and more house insurance policies are requiring residents to get a leak detector device set in. So in relation to proving whether or not you had a leak, you say, well, do you have the leak detector? Because we just went through it for our house insurance, and they said, no, you're going to get a leak detector system set in, or we're going to cancel your insurance. So the deal with water leakage, that might come into play later on, where you say, prove it, here's my leak detection report. Just something that's coming out there now.
Most people know they have a leak when they get their water bill, or they see water going down the sidewalk. A neighbor of ours had one here not too long ago, and he did not know. He knew it because he got a bill, and it was like, I don't know, $600 for water. It was like crazy, you know. And it's just two people. He has quite a bit of landscape, but this is in the middle of winter when he wasn't watering anything, and he jumped on it, you know. And so I think if we're a little bit more aggressive, people will figure out a way to deal with it. They'll get in, they'll get their leaks fixed. But what ends up happening is if you don't do this, then everybody else is subsidizing the people that don't bother to get things taken care of.
How do you find out if you have a leak? Because literally, I didn't do a garden this year. I didn't do a garden over the summer, okay? My husband and I literally, we are gone 7 days out of the week. I don't even drink the water. It tastes nasty. I buy water because all I can smell is chemicals in the water. So we don't even drink our water, okay? But yet my bill is still outrageous. So how do we determine that if there's a leak?
Well, there's two ways.
It could be underground because I'm not seeing it.
If it's, well, okay. Once again, it's in your bill. If all of a sudden, if you have a leak and it's significant, your bill will be real high, and that's how a lot of people know. Some people will just like go out and they can look at their meter and it's spinning like crazy, and that's the way to verify it. But that's how you know you have a leak, and you know. Yeah. Here, the
excuse me.
Works Director talk.
If you,
Yeah.
hi, if you think you have a leak, you can give us a call, and I'll have one of my guys come out there and check. And then, basically what they can do is open the meter box, and if you don't have anything on, they'll see if it's spinning right there.
Because mine has been the same for like 4 years, and I haven't been doing a garden. 4 years. I even cut out my winter garden just to see if I could drop my bill this year, and it didn't drop.
Yeah.
I don't do Thanksgiving at my house because I don't want everybody flushing my toilet.
I don't either.
I have a phone number for you if you have a pen.
I've actually had that done, Nick. One of your guys came out a couple of years ago and checked, and they just have you turn off everything in the house, and then they see if your meter's spinning, then you have a leak somewhere. So it's really a great service. They were very helpful. We didn't. We were in the same position, you know, wondering why the heck our water bill was so high. But that was one of the things that we checked was, do we have a leak we don't know about? And yeah, the city came out and did that check for us. So it's a great service.
Yeah, and I'll just say, like, on a personal note, I live in the city. I live alone. I own a house by myself. And when I moved to the city from the Bay Area, I was really shocked by my water and sewer bill as well, and I didn't understand why I was paying $240 every 2 months when I was like commuting to the Bay Area. That's the base charge. Everybody's going to pay that, whether you flush the toilet once that month or 10 times that month. That's the base charge. So it doesn't matter if my neighbor is married with 2 kids, we're paying the exact same rate. And as they had mentioned, the big piece of that bill, which is 75 to 80% of your bill, is the sewer base charge of $205. And I think what also was misleading to me was that we don't bill monthly, we bill every 2 months. So really, if you divide that over 2 months, most people that live in the city that have usage like mine are paying about $100 to $150 a month. But I agree, just as a consumer and as a customer, I've only worked for the city 3 years, but I've lived in the city 9 years. I thought my sewer and water bill was outrageous, and I was upset as well. So I understand. But then I became working for the city. We have really smart, hardworking people here, and we're doing everything we can to keep the rates down. And a lot of us do live in the city as well. So.
I was going to say, for a leak check, you can call 642-5225, and Natalie's team will help you.
I'm not going to use any names to throw anybody under the bus, but if we're very concerned about our costs, then when I tell a city worker who's checking water meters that there's a leak in the valve in the middle of the street and the water's been coming out for months, he shouldn't tell me to call the city. I think we could all agree on that. He works for the city. He should take a note, and he should go to somebody to get it fixed. Not tell me to call someone else.
Thank you for your service. I do appreciate it. Just a comment, and I'm in the same boat. I came from the Bay Area and I've been here over 23 years, moved to Placerville 6 years ago, bought a home, and I was really crazed by my water bill. So I kept calling every month saying, this has got to be impossible. I mean, I'm one person in a 1,500 square foot home. How can this be? They're like, ma'am, you're paying the base rate. So I can see I'm going to be retiring this year, and I'm thinking I'm going to have to sell my house in a couple of years just because I can't keep up with the PG&E and the water. I don't want to pay that bill. I love this area. I hate to think about moving out, but that's what my predicament may be. But I have a personal question, is that I have two bills. I have the sewer in one bill and then my EID in another. And so together, I'm paying, close to $200 every month for that. And I don't understand that. That just seems crazy.
Yeah, so we are unique that way. So there's parts of the city that were annexed by the city that were already occupied by EID. So they already had their pipes in the ground. We annexed the land, and they continue to provide service. Yeah. And what we do to calculate your sewer is we actually coordinate with EID to find out what your water consumption is in the wintertime to calculate your sewer. I believe it's our sewer.
Yeah.
And EID, yeah.
You're a
You're right.
unique person who has city sewer and EID water. There, like Dave said, there's places in the city where that's happened, kind of on the periphery, I guess, of the city, in some places. Most of it is city water, city sewer. Yeah. Because people would lie. They would lie to you. They would say, there's only me. Everybody would, we would be the most unique city in the world because every house would have one person in it. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. That's what it would happen.
But what about the census we have to do? You guys can look at that.
Well, that's every 10 years, though. I mean, things change. I mean, but yeah.
From an administrative burden perspective, that would be a lot, and I'm not aware of any agency that actually does that.
Yeah.
It looks like we have one more with Sue.
I'm looking at the rate reduction options too. And I really like the eliminate the vacant home sewer discount. That one doesn't cost us a lot, but if you have a vacant house, you should still have to pay for the sewer hookup that's there. And the leak adjustment procedures, if you have a leak every 2 months, there's something more drastically wrong than just your sewer and water. So I would say we need to reform that for sure and not give them anything more than maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years. But if you're leaking at the point where you're reporting a leak every 2 months, then you haven't done anything to fix the leak you already had. And I think the Lifeline discount policy could go to 20% without a problem. And credit card convenience fees, I think that's not a bad idea. Every place else charges you a credit card convenience fee. If you go to the grocery store and you want to use a credit card instead of a debit card, you're going to get charged for it. If you go to not the grocery store, okay.
Gas stations, not grocery stores.
But if you're going to most other places, most of your retail places, they will charge you a credit card convenience fee. Even our little quilt store charges a convenience fee now if you're going to use a credit card. So I don't think that's such a bad idea. That's my comment. Well, there's people who love credit cards and there's people who don't. So.
All right, it looks like one more public comment here, and then if there are no more, I'll bring it back to the council.
Yes, Kay, on your analysis sheet, hospitals pay less than the single family. Does that mean for the whole hospital or just per room, per bathroom in the hospital? $200.79 for hospital compared to our 205 on the other. Can't be the whole hospital. There's a lot of bathrooms in there.
It's per connection. So,
Okay.
you know, the
Makes
primary
more sense.
hospital, yeah, it's one unit, but they also have auxiliary, you know, some of the homes are used by them and other facilities.
Okay.
And their actual usage price is over
Commodity
double
rate, yeah.
single-family residence. So yeah, based on their volume, they're paying double what a single-family residential ratepayer would pay.
Yeah.
Usage, correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very rare for them to actually, their bill is I want to say it's, overall, it could be around $100,000 a billing period, so it's significant.
Plus Marshall's a it's a nonprofit, it's not a, yeah.
All right, I'll go ahead now and bring it back to the council to talk about any other comments and the rate reduction options and what direction we want to provide to staff.
All right, I'll start off. So speaking directly to the rate reduction options, I'm hesitant to delay the implementation of new positions. I think that that wasn't a significant number because we are offsetting it with changing some other positions. So I think we should hold off on that one. That's my position. I'm good with eliminating the vacant home sewer discount. I would say maybe once every 2 years on the water leak adjustment. The credit card convenience fee, I understand, but if there was a commensurate drop in the raising of the, so say, I think we said it was commensurate to about 2% on the water side. So if we raise the rates by 2% less and consider doing a credit card convenience fee, which is avoidable, that might be something that I would be able to support pretty wholeheartedly, actually, as long as there was a commensurate drop in the increase. The Lifeline discount, I mean, these are our lowest income residents by definition. So I'd like to see the difference between 25 and 20%, what that number actually is, to see if I would be willing to support that. But that's my opinion on the actual rate reduction options to start things off.
I have a question too about the Lifeline thing. Is that 100,000 kind of like in ye olde times and before we kind of tightened up on it, or is that number since?
No, it's since we.
Okay.
So, yeah, what we did was, starting in July of 2025, for this current fiscal year, we're requiring anybody that was currently on the Lifeline to provide a current PG&E bill that showed that they were on the CARES program, and that's going to be now an annual renewal process. So then, once we got all of those back, and you can apply throughout the year, because we understand circumstances change. But what we did was, once we got those back, we had 6 months from July through December, and then we took what the cost was for the July bill, the September bill, you know, the November bill, and then we projected that out. What would it be for the next? Because they don't have to renew until the next July. So we used actual numbers to get to that annual, but that annual $100,000 cost is based on who's currently on the Lifeline program.
Thank you. Thank you.
No.
If she's in an apartment, then, right.
So we, correct me if I'm wrong, Natalie, we have some apartment complexes that because everybody qualifies for the care program through PG&E, that we provide that discount to the entire apartment complex. So I would check with the landlord to make sure that they're getting it. If they're not, we can take a look at it.
So I'm kind of similar here. I don't necessarily want to delay implementing new positions. I think there's a lot of need for the positions and the reorganization that we are looking at. I definitely want to eliminate the vacant home sewer discount. Like that seems like an easy and a good one. And yes, whether you're there or not, you're connected to the infrastructure that we're maintaining. So if you own property, you should be paying into the system like everybody else is. Because some people, they're in their house and they hardly use their water at all and they're still paying into it. So I don't think that should be a reason to not have to pay. Yes, I think we should change our leak adjustment procedures. So, once every other year, once every 2 years seems reasonable to me to say that, you can apply for that if you have a leak. I guess on the credit, I guess I can understand the credit card convenience fee, and we see that. I'm not super, I like paying online. Obviously, we get a bunch of checks then, like people would start converting back over to sending us all checks that we have to process because they don't want to pay it. That's what I personally would do. So, I'm not sure if that really saves us a ton or is the best course of action, but I'm open to discussion on that if other people, feel strongly. I think if people are like low income and on the Lifeline discount and we are now going to be raising rates, I don't really want to give them less of a discount while also raising their rates. I just feel like that's like, our very low income folks that qualify for that, and it's a pretty big financial burden for those people. So that's kind of where
And I was just happy that we tightened up on it.
Yeah.
I recognize that there are people out there, like I said, live very close to their checkbooks. So I was just get the deadbeats out of there. Anyway, I think maybe the credit card thing. I disagree. I think that most people, they see the 3% and they pay it. I do all my DMV over the internet, and the state of California goes, that'll be, depending on the vehicle, $500. And then there's the 3% or whatever they're charging. I don't know. I've never done the math, and it's an extra $20. I'll just say it's whatever. It's a number. It's not even that much. And I don't even think twice. I pay. Some people do. Sometimes I do. It depends on the size of the cost. If it's a very expensive thing, then I'll say, no, I'll write you a check or I'll do it money. You can do money transfers. We are just getting into the 21st century. And so we are just now starting to get more payment options. And I think that's what thank you for mentioning that. I was going to suggest that maybe this be a part of a voyage of discovery where we look at other ways to pay your debts. Like, for example, you can pay your water bill by going to your bank. Yeah, and setting up an ACH and doing it that way, and then you would not pay the 3%. And that is almost as good as paying with a credit card. So there's all sorts of ways that you can do this. You can go and drop cash at the front desk up there if you so desire to pay your water bill. And I've seen people do that. So, but I think we should rather than saying let's do it or not do it, let's kind of maybe flesh that out a little bit. I would consider doing it and then just seeing how many people don't pay or start paying with checks again. And my gut tells me a lot of folks they'll just pay.
Well, and one thing just for city council to consider is, we definitely don't want to deter online payments, but it could be a 1%, 2%, 3% pass-through convenience fee to cover some of those costs.
So have you guys already looked at the credit card convenience fee company that you would use or anything like that?
Well, we use Central Square Payments. That is, that's part of our accounting software.
Okay. Yeah. Because obviously right now we can pay online, we can pay the water bill. If I remember rightly, there's also a bank account option.
Mm-hmm.
It's only a few cents.
Yeah.
I just think you're gonna see people switch over to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's an option to switch to ACH direct deposit,
Yes.
you know, in lieu of using a credit card via, then you sort of, the people who are doing it online have another option to get around this fee than going back to dropping off checks or coming in and giving you cash, which, like I said, I personally would do if there wasn't another option, and I'm probably not the only person in the city that would do that.
We believe we have e-check payment capability. It's just not set up, so that's something we can explore.
Yeah.
And provide
Yeah.
further input to the council.
So usually when you do a bank account, if you do an ACH, they're gonna look for a routing number and a bank account number. So it's kind of like writing a check. There usually is a convenience fee. I think the highest one I've ever paid is like 75 cents. So it's not a lot, not compared to the 1%, 2%, or 3% usually when you're using a credit card.
Yeah, that's interesting, because now you're gonna see sausage get made. I bank at Sierra Central, and I pay my Medicare premium, or that little bit, through that, and they don't charge any extra.
Yeah, some depends on the service that we pick up. Some
Yeah, that's
services
true.
will, some services
point.
won't, but
Check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, check. Great.
There's a banking fee for every transaction.
great.
It's
There
just-
is, yes,
The ACH is lower for the merchant, if you will, so.
Well, debit cards are owned by either Visa or MasterCard, so basically it's a credit card.
There are some circumstances with a debit card that,
But the merchant, whoever you're buying the good or service from, they're paying 1
They're
or
paying
2%.
Paying 1, 2.
But if it's a discount card where you get miles, those are like 5 or 6%.
Right.
right. Well, that's what was said.
It would be less than 2%, just because not everybody, you know, like the numbers wouldn't work. Not everybody pays with a credit card currently, right? So we're not.
Yeah, so like, for example, the $95,798 is based on 2.69%. It's actually California law, you can't charge the individual if they use a debit card, but our merchant account still charges us for that service. But to Dave's point, our city manager, it's significantly less if they charge us less than if you were to use a credit card. We could only pass through a credit card fee, but on average, it costs 2.69%. For any online payments. That's just the average, but it would vary by what type of credit card is being used. And then how much would that save the ratepayers? Dave has kind of broken it out. You can see that if we were to recover the entire cost of our transaction and processing fees and pass that on to the customer, you would save about $28,000 in water, which is what, I think 1%, from, decreasing that fee. So that's how you would look at it.
Do we know how many people pay by check? I mean, I pay by check still. So I don't know if we know the percentage of people that we have currently, but, I pay by check and then I pay for everyone else's convenience fee, and it doesn't feel fair.
We can come back with some information. I don't know I can tell you that number is dwindling every billing period by check, yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal here is if we give direction to staff to look at these rate reduction options, if they implement the ones that we said, which sounds like if we're kind of, not the new position one, and I guess not the Lifeline one, or maybe looking at a 5% change on that one.
And I agree. I mean, delaying the new positions doesn't make any sense because we're going to need those positions regardless.
Yeah.
So that's just kicking the can down the road, and there's no reason to do that. But yeah, the vacant home, the reform water leak, the credit card convenience fee, bring some more information back for us to kind of see what that really looks like.
Yeah, it's like if we implement all of those, then where does that get us on the, what, we're 15% versus.
Yeah, the
now
Evaluate
we're at
Lifeline discount policy. personally, I want to keep that around. Just,
Yeah.
we want to keep as many elderly and, low income, getting the best break that they possibly can. We don't want to do that to them.
We don't want to appear to be heartless all the time.
Yeah, so it sounds like we want to look at all of them except for the top
I
one
would
and the bottom
suggest,
So I've also got, next time this comes back, there's a couple of things I would also like to see, not only just for probably our sake, but also for the public's sake, is like bringing back, when you guys talk about fixed costs, break some of those fixed costs down for people so they kind of understand what we're talking about when it comes to fixed costs. For people that aren't dealing with this every day, it's like, okay, what's a fixed cost? Is that employment for, payroll, or is that, buying paper, buying pencils, buying paper clips, fuel, water, all that kind of stuff? Break that down a little bit.
We can do that.
Kind of make it a little clearer too. Let's kind of clear up the 15% part.
EID.
Where's that coming from? Yes, we know we need to go 15% possibly to make up the difference, but is that 15% coming straight from the city, or is that because we are incurring a higher EID cost? And what percentage of that is that EID cost?
We can break that out for you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
rather than my hacked, very bad
Well, we know
example.
you have that amazing computer in your head, John.
Yeah, I know. Boy, it failed me at that point. Okay.
I was going to say, staff is also committed to continuing looking at our budget to see if there's a way to somehow reduce the rates responsibly.
I think one thing too, and this is, none of this spills over into the rest of the city, okay? Correct me. This is a distinct budget essentially that does nothing but pay for these services. So if you hear folks saying, oh, they want to raise the rates because they want to hire a new public works person that doesn't work on the sewer or the water, no. These rates, this money, this revenue goes to pay for the two services we provide, water and sewer. And that's it. So we're not doing that. There's a couple of myths out there. One is, this goes back to when we rebuilt the plant because we had to, that we built this enormous plant to justify tripling the size of Placerville. No. The plant was built to the general plan, which has a build out, and there's a target population plus a percentage because it's not a perfect number. And that was it. So you'll hear people walking around town going, well, they built it for 3 times. No, we built it for the general plan, which has not changed, by the way, since then. So that's just a couple of things you'll hear out there that we're charging money here to feather a nest over here. No. And the sewage treatment plant is designed for the build out of the city plus a factor, but it's like 10% or 20%. It's not double or triple or quadruple. Okay.
The base charge for sewer. There was a measurement done in 2005, that determined within our budget if the city stopped flushing its toilets, everybody just left or whatever, what are the basic costs? So we know principal and interest on the loan. We have standby costs for staff. There's services. We still, even though the plant wouldn't be treating, we still have to keep it running, maintaining it. So it's those basic costs that we still have to pay for, even though the plant isn't fully operational. In theory, yes. I'm not, yes. But here's the thing. So our NPDES permit that every year they ratchet up the requirements, and in a 5-year period, our requirements for discharge increased significantly from the late 90s to the early 2000s. That could happen again. I hope not, but Michael probably knows better, or Melissa. But we just don't know what the State Water Resources Control Board is going to do to us. And everything's wear out too. That's the other piece of it, is deferred maintenance. I will tell you that construction inflation is much higher than normal inflation. For example, the Caltrans index for roads has been in the teens for several years, as opposed to 3 or 4% like food and gas and those kind of things. So The loan with the longest tail, meaning the longest payment series, is the 2006 SRF Loan State Revolving Loan Fund, and the last payment is due in 2040. Correct.
Potentially,
Yeah.
theoretically. Yeah.
It's none.
So it's set at 750 cubic feet for a 2-month period. So it's your winter water consumption from December to February, which tends to be the least amount of water consumption generally for most people. The base charge assumes 750 cubic feet. So when we look at your bill, we look at your water consumption from December to February. So the example is 800 cubic feet. That's our average or median? I think it's our average. So the average is 800. So the first 750 is covered by the base charge, and then you have 50 that's part of the commodity charge. That's how the commodity charge fees are charged, calculated.
Can I?
It's not an exact date for everybody. It's around December to February. So, it takes us, Nick, about a month to read all the meters. So it's staggered. We stay on the same cycle. So we're reading about every 60 days, we read your meter.
The charge refers to February 26th. Maybe it's not over yet, so you guys must have taken the measurements.
So, yeah, like right now, the bill is based on last year's winter consumption. So in September, we look back to your previous December to February reading, which is actually your March water bill. So we look at that. In September, we change the consumption to that amount, and then for the next 12 months, that's used to calculate your sewer charges.
That's why my wife's passing away, made no less money
I'm sorry for your loss.
this next year.
Yeah, in theory, if you're using less water today, your sewer charge, if you're above the base charge, you should go down.
But there is a point, though, you can reduce your water usage down to only a certain level, then you hit the base, and then that's it.
For one person, you're probably going to be under 750, so you're just at the base. Yeah.
I would request from staff that we quantify, on average, for an average, what activity, what was the base cubic feet again?
750.
Thank you. What activity in a home generates 750 cubic feet of discharge? Thank you. Sometimes. The blind squirrel, I get one. Yeah. Don't encourage many Christmas. I have to take the abuse from them. I do anyway. Yeah, I think we should try to, I'm sure our consultant probably has that on a graph somewhere.
Yeah, I think the typical person uses about 60 gallons per day of water usage for indoor needs. So it does really vary on how many people are in the home. For myself, I live in an apartment with one other person, and I use like 400 cubic feet per month. So I would imagine, if you had 4 people, in a home, that you might exceed the
How
750.
many toilet flushes is that? I mean, well, they're all the same now. Aren't they like 2 gallons or whatever they are?
Not everybody has new toilets.
You'd have to have a pretty old toilet to not have a 2-gallon toilet. Okay, anyway, I think I like visuals, and I like that, like this is what people do. So if you're like in a house and you're just doing stuff, because I'm kind of like this. I mean, I work from home, so I don't leave the house, but I don't use that much water, relatively speaking. But of course, people think they don't use a lot of water, and they do. They usually use more water than they think. Yeah, just generally speaking.
Yes, yes.
It's the billing.
We haven't, we would have to do a special read to figure that out. I mean, literally read every meter during that period, which is, it's in between billing periods. I mean, it's not impossible, obviously, but it would. Yeah.
So that's where your convenience fee comes in.
Yeah, you
Charge them a
get,
convenience fee.
that's right. You can pay your convenience fee by just like getting them all. You get one flush, make it a good one.
I'm noticing a little pattern too with the $205 base charge is a lot of people are confused of what that base charge is including. So maybe a little nice description of that would help too at our next one.
Yeah, we can show, approximately what revenue is generated by that and proportionally, what does that cover in your budget? And I think that'll provide a visual for what that cost is.
I mean, like I tell most people, to explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old and then make it really simple, so.
All right, is there any further items or folks ready to adjourn? Oh, no worries.
It's okay.
There is one question.
Oh, there is one more question. Go ahead. Yep. Yeah. You pay one, you see one number and you pay it that way, yes, yep.
Yeah, we can combine the rates together so you can see what the aggregate increase would be for you. Absolutely. You got it.
All right, any further thing anybody would like to say? If not, I will go ahead and adjourn our meeting at 8:12 p.m.
Thank you for coming.
And I want to thank everyone for coming because it's actually really helpful for us when people come and they give us input because otherwise we're just guessing. So I really do want to thank you for taking your time. It's, over 2 hours on a weekday night and we really do appreciate it. So thank you for coming.
Okay.
It's the second Tuesday. Yep.